Welcome to our discussion of the state of New Jersey beaches, sponsored by the William J. Hughes Center for Public Policy and the Coastal Research Center at Stockton University. My name is Dr. John Frungen. I am the interim executive director of the Hughes Center. We have a very informative program featuring DEP Commissioner Catherine McCabe, and Commissioner McCabe has graciously agreed to take some questions later from the audience. So if you'd like to pose a question, there are index cards and pencils scattered throughout the room, and we will collect them during the program prior to the commissioner's speech. So before William J. Hughes was named ambassador to Panama in 1995, he was a national leader on coastal legislation in the U.S. House of Representatives. Bill Hughes wrote laws that banned dumping of sludge. He forced industrial polluters out of the ocean, and he led the fight against ocean incineration of toxic waste. He was also a champion of protecting our beaches and fought to secure funds for beach restoration. Ambassador Hughes will offer a few opening remarks and talk about the importance of coastal policy. Ambassador?
That speech, those remarks that John just made, he's been talking to my mother. But thank you very much for those kind remarks. I'll tell you, John is the new interim director of the Public Policy Center at Stockton, and we couldn't be so fortunate as to have John. I worked with him for many, many years when he was a reporter with the Atlantic City Press, one of the finest reporters. And he's going to take the Public Policy Center to a new plateau. I'm just honored to be here with so many distinguished speakers. Commissioner McCabe has had such a remarkable career. And I think she was probably one of the best selections that Governor Murphy could make, because she's going to take New Jersey, I have no doubt, to new plateaus. And not just coastal management, but energy, the maintenance of energy, the development of alternative energy sources, dealing with global warming, which anybody who's paying attention knows that we have a problem and we need to deal with it. And it's good to be here this morning with Dr. Farrell, who in his own right has been one of our leaders in the region. His work on coastal management and beach programs following Sandy was absolutely outstanding. And we're very fortunate to have Dr. Stewart in helping us basically do coastal zone management in our region. Ed Salmon, who was for years my ally when he was in the General Assembly and all his years in government at the local level, mayor and freeholder, has also been one of my closest friends over the years and one of the leaders in coastal zone management and other issues that affect our state. And it's good to see Mike Tuesto, who for years was with is still with public service, but was one of my strong supporters when I was in the Congress of the United States. And so many other distinguished guests are here today. I'll tell you, ocean policy has been my love for many years. I remember when I was in the prosecutor's office, I'm talking like 50 years ago. And I became involved in an initiative called SOS, Save Our Seas. You may remember. Wilbur Ostrander was the mayor of the city of Wildwood, and we called him Wonderful Wilbur because he couldn't get through two sentences without mentioning the word wonderful. It's a wonderful evening, wonderful to see many friends. So we named him Wonderful Wilbur, but he got me involved in Save Our Seas, because they were closing down our beaches several times a year, you may remember, when the bacteria count was so high. And I got very much involved in that. It was a real concern. I mean, tourists were going to other places throughout the East Coast, and we were not being only impacted in the tourist industry, but it was beginning to affect us. People became very alarmed at the prospect of getting sick by going in our ocean. And I wrote to our congressman, and I got a form letter back. I went home and I said to my wife, Nancy, look at this. I mean, I know this guy well. I mean, I've been trying criminal cases against him, and I get a dear William, thank you for bringing this matter to my attention. It's important. I said, where's he been? I mean, the headlines in the press of Atlantic City are about beach closings, and he's telling me he's going to look into it. I said, I'm tempted to take him on. And my wife said, go for it. I went to Ed Salmon here, and I said, Ed, he was mayor of the city of Wyoming. I said, Ed, I'm thinking about running against the sitting congressman. He went home and had told his wife, this crazy Democrat just came in and told me he's going to run against our sitting congressman. But that started our friendship of many years. But it's been a love affair, and ocean policy is truly one of my loves. It took about 17 years to get New York City out of the New York Bight area. Long time, because it was so cheap to dump sewage sludge, and chemicals and medical waste were all being dumped. And now we see another crisis looming, a number of crises. Aside from global warming, is that we see like 8 million metric tons of plastic waste being dumped in the ocean. The projection is that by the year 2050, we're going to have as much plastic in the ocean as we have fish. Can you believe that? I mean, it's like every minute a garbage truck full of plastic, New York size, is being dumped in the ocean. And it's impacting our fisheries, it's impacting our ecosystem. I mean, we have an area between California and plastic, and Hawaii that's full of plastic the size of Texas. Is becoming such a crisis. And I have to salute the various municipalities that are trying different things to eliminate plastics. I mean, it's trying to change the behavior of our citizens is not easy. But we're working on it. I salute Summers Point and other communities, Margate, that are basically now charging or trying to recycle like we see in places in Delaware, and California led the way back in 2007 when San Francisco outlawed plastics in their community. And we see Washington, D.C., they basically charge a fee, and they built up quite a pot that they use now for recycling other things. So, there are a lot of challenges out there, and I am very happy to see that we have such leaders as Commissioner McCabe, who's going to lead the way in the years ahead. So thank you. We're very proud that the Public Policy Center is focusing on such issues as ocean policy, and I thank you. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Ambassador. Dr. Stuart Farrell's contributions to Stockton's Maritime Science program began with the very first classes taught at this college in 1971. His work for the DEP on coastal zone management and beach erosion after major storms in 1984 and 85 led to the creation of the Coastal Research Center in 1986. Under Executive Director Farrell's leadership, the Coastal Center is a premier research facility providing valuable data on beach erosion, dune management, dredge disposal sites, and local flooding. The center's award-winning model accurately predicted where the existing dune system would fail as a result of Hurricane Sandy, based on dune width, elevation, and the uniformity of the dunes facing storm waves. The Coastal Center monitors conditions at 171 beaches along the New Jersey coast. Stuart will now give a presentation on the condition of New Jersey's beaches as we head into the 4th of July holiday weekend. Dr. Farrell.
Hurricane Sandy was actually kind of an anomaly in terms of storms. It was not a major hurricane. It was not a super northeaster. It was an amalgamation of weather products, a blocking high, a fading hurricane, and a low-pressure system coming across the continent. And it then went into retrograde. In other words, it started moving westward. And that was essentially its undoing of the Jersey coast and western Long Island shore. It ended up with a diameter of 1,100 miles. Storm force winds extended out 500 miles. And the storm surge varied dramatically from Cape May City all the way up to Sandy Hook, where the increase in wave energy and storm surge just kept ramping up as you went north. The eye crossed the Jersey coast north of Brigantine, and we only suffered one major high tide. The first new inlet in 50 years was formed in Mantoloking as the dunes were breached and channels were cut. The only thing that saved it from becoming a near permanent inlet was Route 35, which was built from 16 by 30 by 18-inch thick slabs of concrete, which kept the channel from forming deep within the channel that was cut. The gentleman's house that's in the center there, he was in it all during the storm. That's one of the little sidebars that I found out about it. The road was still closed in the 5th of November when we arrived to do survey work. So we started doing this October 31st and finally finished just before Thanksgiving of 2012. But you can see the work that was done to close the inlet and restore a situation. There was no gas, no sewage, no water, no telephone, no electricity across that inlet for many months. Okay, further south, you have Ortley Beach. Ortley was defended by a small dune, a public boardwalk, and Ocean Avenue. The picture on the right is Ocean Avenue. The boardwalk you can see on the picture on the left was actually landward of the dunes, and you can see how much material was removed. Those things sticking up there were the stormwater and sewage lines that were at street level. So not only was the street removed, but the sub-base, subgrade, and everything else was washed into Barnegat Bay. So New Jersey began a program funded primarily by congressional authorization from January 2013, authorizing the Army Corps of Engineers to restore projects to their design criteria at 100% federal expense. This is where beach nourishment started in New Jersey. Back in 1950, they trucked the first fill I could find out from one side of the Shark River Inlet to the other side. In 1952, the Corps of Engineers moved 2.54 million yards of sand onto the Ocean City beaches as a one-shot thing. And then the state started to getting interested in the 1970s, first with bond issues, and then finally with the passage of an act that provided an annual amount, first $15 million a year, and then in 1994 upped it to $25 million a year for consistent, continuous funding to match the Corps of Engineers investment, which was 65% of project cost, with state funds, which were then turned to the previously under the bond issue, the state said, we'll pay 75% of the cost, you local folks are going to have to spring for 25%. So part of this deal was in 1986, we instituted 105 locations between Raritan Bay and the eastern part of Delaware Bay along the New Jersey coastline. In 2017, we added 65 more in Monmouth County, primarily to satisfy the New York District's need for survey data on a closer spacing. All right, I'm going to go through a couple of these things pretty quick. This is up there in Monmouth Beach in Monmouth County. The green line is the shoreline position. The red line is a trend of changes to the sand volume present on the beach as compared to 0, which was 1986. That's when we started. So this is 30-year trends. This was 1988 versus 2008 after the federal project was completed in Monmouth County. Things kind of deteriorated by 2011. This is before Sandy. And then by 2013, following the Corps returning, we have a beach back in place in front of the seawall at Monmouth Beach. All right, moving south to Salem Avenue and Spring Lake, you can see the effect of the Carmi project, which appeared in 1995. A big boost in both the sand volume present and the shoreline position advanced seaward by over 100 feet. This is Spring Lake in 1989 versus 2011. The next picture shows what happened after Hurricane Sandy. The boardwalk was located in front of the dunes. Not the best place for your physical features, but that's where it was, and it was stripped away. There's the boardwalk prior to a perfect ocean view as I put up there, but this is what it looked like after Hurricane Sandy. This was 2.5 miles of boardwalk that needed replacing, which was all made out of Trex and other synthetic composite materials. It has been replaced as a result of work that went on following Hurricane Sandy. Okay, quickly, Mantoloking. You can see that the trends were kind of negative for years. This is a private home. The guy owns 2 houses on the oceanfront. We've been there since 1986. New owner, his name is George Ring. This was his situation after Hurricane Irene on August 30th, 2011. It cut half the dune away then. Well, after Sandy, he lost both houses. Completely lost both houses. That was all that was left of his beachfront home. They're rebuilding in Mantoloking, bigger and grander, as you can probably imagine. It's amazing what they have put in place since Hurricane Sandy. They're absolutely gorgeous homes. All right, moving to Harvey Cedars, where the project was put in place before Hurricane Sandy. We have, again, the effect in the beach of an advance in the shoreline and a large amount of sand placed from offshore sources on the coastal front of Harvey Cedars. Here's the upper left one, 2006. That was the original dune. And 2010, this is the project dune that was built and grassed after the project was completed in 2009. And this picture shows the effect of Hurricane Sandy. Took about 1/3 of the dune and mined the beach down to levels that were approximately similar to the width of the beach before the project, but this was all restored and there was no damage to any of the homes from the waves. Okay, quickly to Long Beach Township. Here the project had not been completed. This is Holgate in Long Beach Township. You can see the project was finally put in place in 2016 after Sandy was complete. Done, finished. This was the result of the finishing of the authorized Corps projects to the southern terminus in LBT. Okay, 2012, August, or June rather, June of 2012. This is the original dune that was in front of the properties. A reasonable dune, but it was totally variable in elevation, width, thickness, everything about it was just as nature had built it and as individual owners had enhanced it themselves, which is why it didn't meet any kind of defined engineering criteria. Well, after the storm, the houses were still there. It just needed a 30-foot extension ladder to get the front door. And everything under the buildings, water heater, freezers, air conditioners, barbecue grills, were all in Barnegat Bay. Or in one of my guys' homes, his father owned a house and it was filled to the rafters with other people's barbecue grills and other hardware in his home on the edge of the bay in Long Beach Township. However, the pilings did save the day. The FEMA code for building on the wave zone, the wave velocity zone, saved the day. The houses withstood it. They all had significant economic damage, and of course, they kind of lost everything under the house as a result. But the project was completed, but no project for them was no protection from the storm damage. Okay, Ocean City. This is one of my favorites. Ocean City was one of the earliest that was put through the process of building a beach, and you can see back in 1992, they put this effect in, and we had great data for them because in 91 they suffered $4 million in damage to the boardwalk, just the boardwalk. 1992, we had the northeaster of December 92, $0 damage to anything from the waves to the boardwalk. So they got their money back in terms of protection within 6 months. Now, here's what it looked like in the fall of 1992. It was low tide. High tide was under the boardwalk at 20th Street, under the boardwalk. In 1993, after the project, there was now a beach out front that was several hundred feet wider. And this is what it looks like in 2008. And in 2013, after Sandy, you've got 465 feet of dunes out there, and they have not put another grain of sand out there since 1992. Sand has accumulated there as a result of longshore transport from the north end of the island, to be sure, but these folks here have had nothing to worry about from Hurricane Sandy type storms as a result. And then, second favorite place, Cape Bay City, is where in Baltimore Avenue, you could striper fish from a beach boulevard. You stood on the rock seawall and you could striper fish as you wished along most of the oceanfront of Cape May City. Now you can see from this trend line that now there's over 250 cubic yards of sand in front of Baltimore Avenue, and the shoreline has moved seaward by 400 feet. It's quite a walk to the beach since I did it yesterday. I'm pretty convinced that the project has been successful. This is just a pair of Army Corps of Engineers provided these pictures from 1989 versus 1992 after they finished the restoration. It's even better today. Okay, now, here's my pitch for some way we can do this maybe a little bit more interesting by using material that's already available. Very quickly, here's a change that took place between 72 and 95 at Barnegat Inlet when they changed the jetty to parallel that of the North Jetty. Look at the amount of sand. There's at least $3 billion of ratables out there for Barnegat Light Borough should they develop it. Right now, it's a maritime forest. Okay, this particular action shows very locally, 1920 versus May 2006, the difference a jetty makes in terms of sand capture in the city of Brigantine. Brigantine has a project mostly directed at the northern quarter of the shoreline. This is where the sand goes. We're saying maybe we could borrow some of it and put it back and save a few bucks in pumping sand from offshore. Avalon's been a pioneer in doing this. The Borough of Avalon started this back in 2006, and they've done it continuously since with projects to move sand from places where it accumulates excessively back to where it seems to go away from. Here's how it's done. I'm going to go through this pretty quick. Bulldozers push up a ridge of sand, and it ends up looking like this. This is borrowed from the beach face between high and low tide. You park an excavator on top of the ridge, and you load these 25-yard trucks, and they drive on the beach to where you want to put the sand. They unload the trucks and scallop it into whatever shape the ridge wants to look like. This is what it looked like at the end of the project, 58,000 cubic yards worth sitting on the oceanfront beach at 23rd to 15th Street in Avalon. This is what it looked like after they spread it in May, their first project in 2006. They just completed doing 50,000 yards again this spring, as did the city of North Wildwood, getting sand from the city of Wildwood from their storm drain outlets, which are 400 feet from the water's edge, so that they will drain when it rains and they don't back up into the city streets. Okay, last bit. Okay, this is where we took the sand. This is where we put the sand. This is what the sand deposit, the dark green, is deposits. Sand was added in that particular part of the Avalon shoreline. This is the borrow areas 6 months later. The green shows that they recovered all that was taken by 6 months on the beach. Material was redistributed from the placement zone. You can see the box outlines the area, and the red zones indicate material was redistributed. But you can see the green all around it. So it was just spread out a bit from the pile that was placed there. So it was effective, and we are kind of trying to advocate this for places where we could do it without interruption or interference with the normal beach that would be there and serve as protection normally. We got situations in a number of places which I indicated where this could be done. And that be it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Farrell. So you see, when you look at the devastation that occurred to New Jersey's coast from Sandy, and the work that's been done, today the beaches are in great shape, and we're heading into the 4th of July, you know, with the great beach season. But what Dr. Farrell's presentation really shows, I think, is how important public policy is, doing the right program. There are effects, good and bad, on the decisions that are made regarding public policy, and I thought that was a very dramatic representation of that, so thank you. Okay, planner Jim Rotala, principal of Rotala Associates, has for years influenced public policy in this region regarding economic development, the environment, and local government. He has served as administrator in Ocean City, vice president of the Atlantic County Utilities Authorities, and was Atlantic County's planning director. Jim is currently helping to establish a coastal resiliency center here at Stockton University, and he will take a few minutes to update you on these efforts. Jim?
Thanks, John. Good morning. The Coastal Resiliency Institute idea has really came right after Superstorm Sandy. And has morphed over several years. And let me see if I can do this. There we go. And has continued to develop. And the idea is to, and this has been done all over the country, and we'll talk about some of the examples, is to bring the federal government, the state government, local government, the private sector, and nonprofits together to work on coastal resiliency issues. Just looking at this as an industry just for a second, the Center of Climate Integrity, Washington, D.C. think tank, projects that by 2040, resiliency will result in $400 billion in investment throughout the country just for storm surge protection. That's only a portion of what coastal resiliency is. Offshore wind, which is an element of resiliency, the University of Delaware recently released a report that projects a $70 billion investment by 2030 just in the 7 Atlantic coast states. So this is a huge industry. In addition to being a significant public policy issue, it is also a growth industry that Atlantic City is well positioned to be involved in. Last year, the city and Stockton band together and submitted an application to New Jersey EDA for a grant to further this idea, to put together a feasibility study. That study is ongoing right now. It'll be completed in August, and we're looking at a number of sites. We're looking at other opportunities that other similar centers throughout the country, how they operate, how they're funded. Talking to various partners. We've had significant meetings with Rutgers University, with Stevens Institute, with the Commissioner's Office, with the State Governor's Office, and obviously with the city, and actually some private companies as well are putting together MOUs with those organizations, and also estimating the economic impacts and how this can be paid for, both from a capital standpoint and an operating standpoint. So why Stockton? Why Stockton and Atlantic City? Well, one, we have the only beachfront university campus on the East Coast. But as you heard from Dr. Farrell, Stockton has been in the coastal resiliency business for 35 years. There's a history, there's a relationship with the communities that's second to none. And in addition to that, in addition to the science, Stockton has many other elements that play a very important role in changing public policy. The Youth Center is a great example. The Youth Center does polling, they do surveys, they really help to mold public policy. And that's so important when you're dealing in an issue like this, where you're really dealing with change. In addition, the Levinson Institute, which is part of Stockton University, looks at the economics of the region and tracks that, also a very important element. And also social programs. The Stockton University is extremely involved in Atlantic City and other communities in dealing with a whole host of programs that are also important to really solving and addressing resiliency issues. Why Atlantic City? Well, Atlantic City has a lot to protect. Atlantic City is the heart of a $7 billion tourism industry that is an engine that powers all of South Jersey. It's visited by over 25 million visitors a year. That is something that needs to be protected and be able to continue to grow, not just for the region, but for the state as well. Also, Atlantic City can be a model for resiliency. The photo here was a rebuild by design effort that was done, funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, and involved the Princeton University, University of Penn, and many other universities. So there already is a foundation of resiliency study in Atlantic City. It's been supported by a number of groups. There was, we'll talk in a minute about a number of trade magazines throughout the country that talked about Atlantic City being a resiliency hub, and also the county's economic development study that was done by Angelo Economics, which really focused on about 6 industries, growth industries, noted that resiliency was one of those industries for our region. And then finally, we're going to be the home of the first large-scale offshore wind farm. And I just talked about how large of an impact, economic impact, wind farms are going to have. But certainly a major part of resiliency, and actually Stockton University already has a MOU with Ørsted Wind. These are just some of the quotes that came out of the various articles and economic studies that were done in the region. Betting on resilience, a resilience campus is probably one of the safest entrepreneurial ideas to pop up in Atlantic City for decades. And these weren't things that we told people to say. This is what they said and at the time when Atlantic City had lost 4 casinos and was looking for a way to diversify its economy. So what was true 4 years ago is still true today. The governor talked about a wind institute as part of his economic development platform that came out in October of 2018. And that is also something that we've included in the resiliency study. Given, and again, what the governor was looking at here is a research development arm that could help to expand the offshore wind industry. Comparable models. This is a number, there's a few of many that are throughout the country. University of North Carolina, Coastal Research Institute just received funding through Homeland Security, $20 million over the next 5 years for research and development. Funding, significant funding, is flowing into resiliency issues. And the leaders in this area, whether they be nonprofits, whether they be foundations, are looking for credible organizations that can move forward to change public policy and to set the agenda for the future. So there's significant opportunities there. We're also doing a site feasibility assessment. There are a number of sites throughout the city, some that are owned by the city, some are owned by Stockton University, that are being considered. And we will finalize the site selection or site recommendations in August. Proposed funding, I touched on this earlier, but there's a significant number of funding sources, many of which aren't listed here. The Stockton University has retained a nationally involved consulting firm that is helping us to identify funding sources and actually to meet with various funding sources and start to solidify a economic plan for the center. As we work through this, what we realized is it takes about 40 months to build a significant center like we're talking about. And we had our first meeting of our steering committee about 2 months ago, and it included other universities, included nonprofits. CRDA was there, and the state was represented, and others. And the overwhelming point that came out of that meeting was, we can't wait 40 months. This has to happen now. And the following week, we met with Harvey Kesselman, the president of the university, and his response was, this has to happen now. And what has transpired is there is space on this campus between 4,000 and 8,000 square feet, which will be used as an incubator facility for the Coastal Research Center, and actually get it up and running as soon as possible. So that's our next step, one of our next steps. The study for EDA will be done in August of 2019, which is their requirement. We'll continue to meet with agencies to sign memorandums of understanding. We have draft MOUs with the City of Atlantic City, with the state. I mentioned there's already one with Ørsted Wind, and there's a number of others that are being pursued. Funding commitments are being pursued, both for the short-term research and development, but also for the development, capital improvement of the facility. And hopefully by the end of this year or early next year, an incubator facility will be created on this campus. So a lot's happened in a short period of time. This is just one effort to really move ahead ocean policy, as the congressman mentioned, and an important aspect for Atlantic City, for our region, both from a standpoint of resiliency, but also from a standpoint of economic development. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And at the conclusion of our program, I encourage you, if you have questions for some of these speakers, to come up and speak with them. Okay, our main speaker today, New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection Commissioner Catherine McCabe. She's had a distinguished career in environmental law and science. She served as Assistant Attorney General for the state of New York before holding several senior positions with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Before holding several senior positions with the Environmental and Natural Resources Division of the Department of Justice. From there, Commissioner McCabe joined the EPA, where she worked in enforcement and as a judge on EPA's Environmental Appeals Board. In recent years, she has been Deputy Region 2 Administrator, and she has helped oversee all EPA programs in New Jersey, New York, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. She has served as Acting EPA Administrator and Acting Region 2 Administrator. With all this high-level experience, Commissioner McCabe assumed the leadership of the New Jersey DEP in January 2018. She is pursuing the ambitious environmental goals of Governor Phil Murphy. These include creating a clean energy economy and addressing the effects of climate change along the Jersey coast. So please give a warm Stockton welcome to DEP Commissioner Catherine McCabe.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you for the invitation on such a beautiful day on the Jersey Shore. As I was saying earlier, I could have ridden my bike up from Ocean City, where my husband's family has been summer residents for about 3 generations now. And thank you, Dr. Farrell, for that whirlwind State of the Beaches tour from north to south. Could we do that once again slowly, please? The scientist in me would love to have a set of your slides. And I want to ask, sitting behind you, stand up, Dave and Bill. Dave Rosenblatt, who is the Assistant Commissioner for Climate and Flooding Resiliency, as well as the newly appointed Chief Resilience Officer of the state of New Jersey, and Bill Dixon, who is the right-hand man to Dave for everything coastal. Dave and Bill have worked together on doing a lot of that beach work that Dr. Farrell was talking about. So I want to give a hand to you guys for the work you've done. I do remember back in, let's see, what is it, early 80s, I guess, or to mid 80s, sitting with my kids at high tide in Ocean City right up against the bulkhead. So about room for one beach chair, except maybe you had to fold it up when the tide got really high. Great place to watch the kids because they were tiny and couldn't get very far, but a very different picture. I had to laugh, Dr. Farrell, when I saw the under the boardwalk before picture, because that's where we used to go when it got too hot out, under the boardwalk. Very, very different picture today. I was extremely grateful, among many others in my family and the whole community, that we had those dunes to protect us when Sandy arrived. We still got 5 feet of sand in the backyard, but that was because sand will travel right up the pathways, even when they're cut laterally through the dunes. But that was quite minor compared to what the devastation could have looked like there. And I was very cognizant that we were on the southern side of the eye, and I know the people who are on the northern side, as some of the pictures of Maniloking were showing, for example, really got very badly devastated. And some of those people don't have the financial means to rebuild after an event like that. So this is a real vulnerability, not just for the economy of our shore, but for the vulnerability of our people and our communities that live along the shore. In times of climate change, we can expect to see Miss Sandy come again under another name. I hope no time soon, but we think about that a lot at the DEP. I am very honored and proud to work for Governor Murphy, who has made climate change a central priority of his administration. In his first few executive orders that he issued after taking office, he featured offshore wind, for example. That's on the mitigation side of climate change, because the cause is us, as we know. And here in Jersey, we generate, we're pretty dense here. We're a small state, but we're pretty dense, and we generate our share of greenhouse gases. Not only from the power sector, where we have focused both national and state efforts for years, but also from our cars and all of the vehicles that fill our roads. So we have a lot of challenges in front of us here on the mitigation side. Orsted, glad to see you in the House. Congratulations on getting those RX. We are very thrilled. And we look forward to continuing to work closely with Orsted and with the BPU and other state agencies and all the people who get involved in making offshore wind a successful venture here in New Jersey to meet or give us a big step at least towards meeting the governor's goal of 100% clean energy in New Jersey by 2050. Of course, that's only the mitigation side of climate change, doing our share to cut down on the greenhouse gas emissions to the atmosphere that are causing the global warming. More stark along the shore, but these days even inland and up along the Delaware is the resilience side and the resilience challenges with the flooding that we see in inland, as well as the flooding and storm surges that we see more and more along the coast. So that's why we now have a Chief Resilience Officer, and New Jersey DEP, again with partners, is working on a coastal resilience plan. We also plan to broaden that out into a climate change strategic plan for the entire state, because many of the effects are being felt upriver, as it were, and even in the northern parts of the state now. So that's one of our big challenges. We do have a long way to go, but we're off to a good start here, I think. On the mitigation side, in addition to offshore wind, we did finally, yay, a couple of weeks ago, get back into RGGI, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative that New Jersey was a founding state member of, and then Governor Christie decided to pull us out in 2010. So we had to negotiate our way back in. I spent a lot of years as a litigator and negotiator. That was one of the tougher negotiations I think I've had, getting back in after you've left the party. You're not everyone's favorite. So glad to say we'll be back into the auctions as of the beginning of 2020, and we'll be getting some proceeds from the RGGI auctions that will help us with many efforts, including on the transportation side, where we really need to focus. Over 40% of the greenhouse gas emissions in this state come from our vehicles. So we really need to get to work on reducing those emissions. Electric vehicles are in our future. It once seemed like something out of, who remembers the Jetsons? Anybody remember that from that cartoon thing where all the little planes zipped around? It seemed like something of the far future, but I think it's coming. It's got to come faster, and we've got to get busy building out the electric infrastructure and getting all of us off of our addiction to our horses and buggies known as gas-powered vehicles. So that's a major push that we'll have to be working hard on for the years to come. Let's talk about water quality, a very important part of our beach life here, also important inland and upstate. So the good news is that New Jersey's water quality, the ocean water quality here, is outstanding. Last year, the monitoring that we do weekly here from mid-May into mid-September showed that our ocean beaches meet standards 98% of the time. A little less if you go into the Back Bay side and include that, but we're still doing pretty good at 95%. The challenges in the Back Bay are a little tougher than on the ocean water quality side, because we have a lot of stormwater runoff, as we know, from down our rivers and along the bays. A lot of nutrients come, and that helps to give us more of the bacteria that we don't want to see. Vibrio, for example, has shown up in some of the waters down along the Delaware shore in particular. Vibrio is a natural bacterium that lives in the water, but if you go into the water and you have a cut and you're in there clamming or among the grasses, if you have an open cut, you can actually get a serious infection. Even we've had circumstances of those necrotizing bacterial infections, those so-called flesh-eating bacteria, something that we don't want to see. So if anyone is fond of clamming in the weeds, particularly along the Delaware shore, please wear your high waders. Same thing if you're in Barnegat Bay. This summer, we are seeing a spreading of the clinging jellyfish, little tiny, interesting-looking jellyfish. You can barely see it, and that's the problem. Tends to cling to the weeds in the Back Bays. It won't kill you, but it hurts so badly that it sends people to the hospital. So we had originally, in the past couple of years, only seen that like at the mouth of the Nemecheta in the northern part of Barnegat Bay, but now it's showing up further south and really odd place in a salt pond down in Wildwood. I know, which Dr. Farrell is looking at me like, how could that happen? We don't know. We don't know yet. We're still trying to figure that one out. But there are these, little bacterial menaces and jellyfish menaces here and there to give us just a note of caution. They don't prevent us from enjoying our water, but just to be a bit careful. In the inland lakes, you may have noticed in the weekend's news that we've also started to get some pretty serious harmful algal blooms. Lake Hopatcong was basically knocked out in terms of swimming for the past weekend because of that. And it's a similar kind of cause with the combination of too much nutrients into the lake, and then you get storms that flush a lot of stormwater down, brings more nutrients, weather gets hot. Thank you, global warming. Now we've got pea soup, harmful algal blooms. So these are all things with our stormwater that we need to pay attention to a lot more, both along the shore and inland. They're particularly important in our Back Bays. And as Ambassador Hughes was saying, along with stormwater comes not just the nutrients, but typically plastic. That's a major, major source for all of the plastic that gets out not only into our waterways, but into the oceans and way out in the middle of the Pacific, the giant plastic raft. Whales have been known to be pulled up on beaches, whether it's Atlantic or Pacific, that have bellies full of plastic. And the statistic that I heard, Ambassador, was that if we don't reverse this and stop this plastic pollution of our oceans, not sure by the year, whether it's 2050 or some somewhat later year, but 1/3 of the fish we eat will be plastic because they're ingesting that plastic too. So this is a serious problem that we really do need to do a better job on, and I commend the towns around New Jersey that and Jersey City most recently that are starting to put the ban on plastic bags, or like we did in Washington, D.C., put at least a fee on it so that it tends to motivate people to bring their reusable bags. I've been carrying mine for like 20 years. They can last that long. One thing we don't need off our shore, and the governor's been really clear about this, as well as Representative Pallone has been very verbal about it, and I think he will be tomorrow again at a press conference. We do not want offshore drilling. Thank you, Ambassador Hughes, for getting rid of the dumping off of our coast, but what we really don't want now is to have the oil industry come back. And not only are we worried about oil spills, I don't know if you all remember Santa Barbara, but the mistakes that California made are so many decades ago that we are fools to think about doing this again close to our shores. But even the testing that they do to go out with the soundings that they need to explore the bottom to see if there really is any oil out there, that alone has an effect on our marine life, an effect that we don't need. Marine fisheries are valuable and important to us, not only for their own sake, but for the billions of dollars of our fishing industry here in New Jersey, which is very important to our economy. I don't think the federal government is actually pushing ahead with that, and they've opened the door, but no one seems to be running through it. And I'm thinking that part of the reason may be that there really isn't that much oil out there. So the oil companies are really not that motivated. So hopefully, we'll be able to hold them off on that until we get an administration in the White House that wakes up and has a little more sense than to suggest such a thing as offshore oil drilling off of the Jersey Shore. New challenge. Good news and challenge news. Public access. Who knows what the public trust doctrine is? Yeah, so public trust doctrine, I remember studying this in law school. I started to write a thesis on it for one of my classes. What is the public's right to get access to not only the beaches, but to riparian shorelines through our states and through the Northeast, through the whole country? We're really different here on the East Coast than they are in California, where they were, from the beginning, pretty clear that all the public has a right to access to the beach, and that should not be impeded by anyone. When I started trying to write a thesis on this, I was looking at what the laws were in the Northeast, figuring that wouldn't be too complicated. Such a hodgepodge of laws up and down the East Coast. Private beach here, all public beaches there, but we have not done a good job in the Northeast or here in New Jersey of guaranteeing the public the right to have both physical and visual access to the water in a fair and equitable way. So the legislature, in its wisdom, and the governor has signed a new law that codifies the public trust doctrine here in New Jersey that guarantees the public the right to a fair and equitable access to the beaches. Now, I think we might do better in South Jersey on this. I was sort of surprised to hear that this was as much of an issue in North Jersey as it is, but we will be having to turn our attention to that very soon, to look at the spots where we are really not providing people the access to the shore that we should. I know that, when I look out at the beach in Ocean City, there is buses that roll in from Philadelphia all the time, and, you have to pay a beach fee. It's not that much. You get some things for it, but we've got lots of people from the urban areas who can come down and enjoy our shore with us too, and that's the way it ought to be. So we will begin stakeholdering to get some good advice from all the interested parties this summer about what rules we should be developing. We will address the difficult issues as we develop this rule of what does fair and equitable access mean with respect to parking and access to restroom facilities, which are kind of necessary if you want people to be able to come to the beach. It will not be an easy time. I think lots of people have very strong opinions. We're all very, very attached to our beaches, and our beaches the way they were. We don't like to change. So this will be, I think, a real challenge for the DEP, but we're very committed to moving out on it and to working with our partners to come up with some sensible rules to guarantee the public the access to the Jersey Shore that they deserve. So, happy to join you here today. Get out and enjoy the beaches. Happy 4th of July, everyone. Can't wait to see the fireworks.
Okay, this is a fairly long one. Will the state of New Jersey ever consider waiving or decreasing CAFRA permit access, for municipal beach replacement projects? Beach, it's hard to read. Beach acreage always hits the maximum 30,000 permit fee. It's hard to read, but would the DEP ever consider decreasing CAFRA permits for municipal beach projects?
Decreasing.
Decrease.
Can you hear me? Is this working? When anyone asks me to waive something, my caution flag goes up. So I'm not sure about waiving CAFRA protections, but the word consider also always makes my antenna go up. There's nothing that I wouldn't consider. I always try to look at issues with the pros and the cons. One of my principles, I've got 5 of them, by the way, is to listen to all sides. So let me tell you my 5 principles. 1, follow the law. 2, use the best available science. 3, listen to all sides, even if they're asking you to waive something and that makes you nervous. 4, find the best balance. And 5, be transparent with the public as you do it. So open for discussion. But CAFRA has been a tool that has been incredibly valuable and important to us in being able to control the development along the coastline to protect our beaches and to protect the quality of life here along the coast. So I think it should be a robust discussion of how we should use that. There's going to be a lot of intersection between the public access rule as we get that developed and the CAFRA rules as well as the flood hazard rules. So we welcome that discussion.
Thank you. Okay, the Union of Concerned Scientists issued a report entitled Underwater Rising Seas, Chronic Flooding and the Implications for U.S. Coastal Real Estate. Could you offer an assessment of that rather dire forecast and what it means for New Jersey?
I have seen a range of dire forecasts, and I tell you what I have the most confidence in. The scientists that we have here in New Jersey are really incredible for the knowledge and work that's been done on the coastline. Thank you, Dr. Farrow. And Bob Kopp from Rutgers also has done a lot of work on the rising sea levels and what the ranges of predictions are for that. There's really a wide band, and a lot depends on what we do and on the mitigation side of global warming in the next 10 years. If we keep going the way we are at the national level and pretending it's not happening, the states, it's not just New Jersey, but, the other Northeast states, California, states in the absence of federal action are really trying to keep this going so that we can contribute to what needs to be an international effort to reduce global warming. But it's really going to be very hard to tell what predictions are the right ones, whether, Dr. Kopp's got the right probability analysis for the physical factor, but the economics of that, which I think, there have been a number of studies of that, is really going to depend heavily on how good a job we can do on reducing global warming and keeping that sea level rise and the storm surge that accompanies it to a minimum. It's a vast, vast difference.
Commissioner, if I could follow up on that and try to just take perspective of the average person in the public. I mean, there's broad unanimity of agreement among scientists on climate change and the coast. When people see headlines that say Atlantic City could be underwater in 40 years, I think a lot of people just think, what does that really mean? What would you say to those people about the danger or threat of rising sea levels in real terms that they should really take seriously?
Well, if you're living in Atlantic City, you should be taking it very seriously. Living in Ocean City, I take it very seriously. I think that we are very much looking at a situation in 40 years based on the projections by Dr. Kopp and others where we could be walking around, from ankle deep to knee deep in 40 years as a routine matter. But again, there's a lot of things that we can do, and that's one of the tasks of our coastal resiliency plan that Dave is guiding, that Dave has worked for years on looking at the physical things you can do that we were seeing, the beach replenishment. We've done a great job with that. That really helps rebuilding the dunes. That helps to protect us. You got to pay attention to the back bay side of this because a lot of the flooding comes in from that side. So in some places it will be possible to put in physical seawalls and dunes and beaches that protect us, but the price tag of doing it every place would be extraordinary. So I think we have some hard choices ahead of us, and again, how hard those choices and how big the threat is depends a lot on what happens with keeping our global warming down. But if you just look on any one of those curves, there's almost no curve at this point that doesn't require us to do something. And that's why we need a coastal resilience plan that will not only tell us what we have, but what are our options, what are the cost of those options, and what kind of decisions and factors should we be using. Dave is preparing something, what do we call it these days, Dave? Not a decision support tool. Support system. It's basically a disciplined way of looking at the various factors to figure out where does it make the most sense to be putting in the physical structures. Whether it's elevating homes, as we saw in some of the pictures, that works, depending on what level you're dealing with, or which is a very individual decision, unless FEMA's bought you out and insist that you raise your house. Whether it's that individual level or a level that requires federal assistance, like replenishing our beaches and dunes. Lots of decisions to be made, and we need the tools to make those decisions with. So I'm really appreciative of the work that New Jersey DEP and partners will be doing under the Coastal Resilience Plan to help us think that through as the choices become more clear.
Commissioner, could you speak to the algae bloom in Lake Hopatcong, what is being done, and the current state of affairs?
Well, as of yesterday, our aerial flight over the lake indicated that it's getting a little better, and we have people out on the water over the weekend taking water samples. I will know by approximately noon what those water samples are showing. We are hopeful that the bloom will fade and that Lake Hopatcong can be reopened for swimming. We haven't closed it other than the state park, but we've warned people that if you go into the water when there's an algal bloom, you're putting your health at risk. I was particularly concerned to hear, although I knew enough to ask the question. As a little girl growing up on lakes, I know a lot of us still have our pipes into the lakes, and the families have been drinking the water out of the lakes for generations. Yeah, some people are still doing that at Lake Hopatcong, so anyone who's doing that is particularly vulnerable. So what we've been focused on is monitoring the situation so that we pay attention first to those issues that are a health threat to people, like drinking water. Secondly, trying to give them up-to-date information so that they can reopen the recreational areas as soon as possible. I am cautiously optimistic that that may happen based on the trend that we saw yesterday, but it's really too soon to tell. And if we have more weather events, like we've been having with these sudden heavy rainstorms followed by a heat wave, we can expect these things to keep on happening until we get our nutrient phosphorus discharges under control.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier that the quality of the ocean water is very high in your testing. What do you attribute that to?
Well, let me see. For beginners, we don't have any dumping of garbage off of our coast anymore to float aboard. We did have an incident last summer where medical waste was observed washing up on the beach in Asbury Park, just as the governor was en route there to do a press conference. So we scrambled really quickly to clean that up and to try to track down the source. So here's what we think. In New Jersey, we have a lot of combined sewer overflows, where our combined sewer system, which handles sewage as well as rain water, when the rain is too heavy, all of it cannot, there's not the capacity for all of it to go through the sewage treatment plant. So it kind of flows out the side through these unpermitted combined sewer overflows. All of those in Jersey are now netted, so they should be holding back, medical syringes, which we found a lot of on the beach. They should be holding back, the big plastic and things like that. They don't hold back the E. coli, unfortunately, and worse, we get a lot of drift in the northern end from New York. So we rather think that what we were seeing last summer with the eruption we had along Asbury Park, which we hadn't seen in years, was probably coming from New York CSOs, because there are still many up there that are not covered. So it's us, what is causing water quality problems? People, combined sewer overflows, lack of stormwater controls is pretty much the root cause.
And one final question. I mean, you talked about the major development on wind energy that was just recently announced. And could you speak a little bit more about what you see coming out of that economically, and what challenges might prevent success in this program?
No challenge will prevent success. I am confident that we will overcome. The immediate challenges for the offshore wind are the physical challenge of getting it constructed. That comes with the environmental challenge of getting it constructed in a way that it is compatible and not harmful to our marine resources or our marine fishing industry, which is really important to get right. Fishing and offshore wind turbines can be quite compatible. In fact, some fishermen find that actually, if you're a recreational fisherman, you can go right up to the rig. You'll find it a great fish habitat, great place to fish. So I think all of those, although we have to work hard on them to get it right, will be overcome. The reason that the state just did the renewable energy credit that was awarded to Ørsted for the first tranche here is because it's not yet fully competitive economically. But as more offshore wind comes on, and this will be Ørsted's project here off of Atlantic City is going to be, the biggest project to get off on the East Coast. And that'll be our start, our hook. And I think as more get built, because there's many in line behind it, the price, as it always does, will come down.
Thank you for this very informative session. It was really great, and we appreciate you being here. All right, thank you.
Okay. I'll take your question after. Thank you, John.